on a very serious note, it is time to stop lying to yourself. I'm going to be breaking down some of the very common arguments that people make in favor of Bitcoin today and dismantling them, showing you where I agree with them, where I strongly disagree with them as well, just so that we can keep a realistic perspective on what's going on in this market. I got to preface this video by saying that I'm not bearish on Bitcoin. I think we're going to reach brand new all-time highs. I think we're going to double, triple, whatever those all-time highs. I'm super confident in holding it, and I have been for many years, and I expect it to stay that way. But a lot of people completely bullshit themselves in this space, and I've actually got a really nice comment here from I'm guessing a subscriber who laid out some of the reasons he disagrees with my most recent video. If you haven't watched that, make sure you're subscribed and hitting the like button so you get notified of these videos. And then go back to my previous video where I actually compared Bitcoin to the S&P 500 and showed you how actually we could be headed down to 20K according to that particular chart. Doesn't mean I think we're going there. I'm just putting out some analysis. This person raised some really interesting points, and I want to break them down because I know that a lot of people are thinking the same thing. So here we go. Here is the comment. This is quite long, and what I've done is actually made it a little bit easier to understand the key points, but let's read it through first. First of all, thank you very much, Dave, for writing out a nice comment. You voiced your opinion, but you weren't rude about it. It's quite rare on YouTube, so I just want to thank you for that. And this person mentions, my pessimistic outlook is based on the performance of the S&P 500, and while Bitcoin does actually follow the same trends, I don't necessarily believe it will be to the same degree. Me too. Why do I say that? Several reasons. Here are his reasons. It's a little bit easier to read over here. Number one, whatever it falls to, it always rises again. And people know and expect this, so they will hold on. Number two, there's no evidence that big whales are selling Bitcoin off. Number three, we've had 2 years of pandemic where the world went into lunatic mode, and yet Bitcoin didn't fall and disappear. Number four, a major war going on with Russia and Ukraine, and yet Bitcoin is still holding firm. Number five, so hopefully you guys can start to see how some of these statements are just straight up not true. Number five, it's worth and that's the main common problem with Bitcoin investors, by the way, is they straight up lie. Like, they lie to themselves. Again, no shade at you, Dave. I think you're an amazing guy, and I really appreciate your comment. I want to make this point really clear. I'm not trying to rip into Dave. I love you, Dave, but you're a representation of many, many other people, and that's why I'm highlighting this today. It's worth 2 trillion and also getting more scarce. 6, it's held its line of support very rigidly on around the 39K, and that line is ascending. Number 7, many rich entrepreneurs are singing its praises and predicting anything up to 10x or 100K as soon as this year, perhaps. And given all of that, I just think that using the S&P 500 as the deciding factor in the fortunes of Bitcoin is probably a little short-sighted. Anything can happen, of course, but that's my opinion. There are a lot more YouTube crypto channels with a much more optimistic outlook. Guess what? It's profitable to be a bullish YouTuber. You just get more views, you get more sponsorships, you get more money. This is a horrible business decision for me to make a video like this, but that's hopefully going to explain a little bit of that away. We'll see. Perhaps I'm biased, as I did buy some today. Again, this is why I love Dave. Dave is actually self-aware as well. Dave is very aware that he is too biased. Because he's bought Bitcoin, and I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because again, you have epitomized so many things with Bitcoin investors, and you've done it eloquently and respectfully, and I love it. I love it. I love the way that you're discussing this, and that's why I wanted to play ball with you, throw it back a little bit, and play around with this. So let's start with all of these points. I want to break them down point by point, but all in the context of this person's original point, which is that while Bitcoin does follow the same trends as the S&P, I don't agree it'll be to the same degree. These are his several reasons. So actually his argument doesn't even hold up from there, because he says it, kind of would follow it in some ways, but not to the same degree, which is exactly what I was saying. So there's not actually a disagreement there. But what he mentions here is wherever it falls to, it always rises again, and people know and expect this, so they will hold on. Look, there's always going to be some group of people in the space who are always going to be bullish on Bitcoin regardless of how low it drops. But the thing I want you to keep in mind is that Bitcoin does still fall. It does still fall regularly by 50% or more, by 70%, 80%. By the way, just to put this in perspective, I'm not sure if you guys have ever done the math on this, but if you haven't, then here I am to solve that problem for you. Let's go ahead and take a completely clean Bitcoin chart that I've never touched before. And I just want to illustrate something mathematically to you to show you how easy it is to achieve a minus 75% drop. Again, I'm not saying we're going to do this, but you are a trader slash investor, and if you don't know this stuff or you don't want to entertain these ideas, you're an idiot. There's no other way around it. You're a total idiot because you're putting your money in a very risky asset and then you're refusing to understand the risk. So that's why this is so important. Lighting is getting really dark now, but bear with me. From $60,000, if you see a 50% crash, that's going to put you down at a price level of 30K, right? Take a look at this. We're at $30,000. That's a 50% drop, right? If you see another 50% drop from there, let's just put 60K at the top. So this is 60K up here. Let me just mark these levels. So 60K right here, 30K right here, and 15, this is half of 30, of course, is right here. So you're going to start to understand something quite important here in just a second. Now, this first gap here represents a 50% crash. This second gap also represents a 50% crash, but the overall move down is only minus 75%. This is a display of how fucked you are in markets that are dropping. You can keep losing 50% over and over and over, and your net worth will keep halving. It'll keep, if you had 100K up here, you're down to 50 over here, you're down to 25 over here. If Bitcoin falls down to 7,500, you're down to 12.5 over there. It keeps halving, but the actual overall loss doesn't increase as drastically. This is a minus 50% drop, but this is only a minus 75% drop. If you half that and you fall down to $7,500, it becomes only an 87% drop. So hopefully you can start to see that, in the context of the all-time high, if you're losing money, you're in a really bad position. This alone is why I don't entertain altcoins. Altcoins tend to see these kind of drops all the time, and it's actually not true. Bitcoin can keep dropping even if people are holding it. Really all it requires is fear, and it's already happened. It's already happened at similar times to the S&P 500 many times. So number two, there's no evidence that the big whales are selling Bitcoin off. That's just straight up not true. I made a video on this. Let me pull this up for you right here, where I was literally talking about how Bitcoin holders, large Bitcoin holders, have been selling. Elon Musk news, very interesting. I might make a video on that. Let me know in the comments if you want me to make a video on that. Just gonna type this into the YouTube search bar. I should have had this already, but it's okay. I didn't manage to prepare it in time. This is potentially the right chart. Let me just make sure that it is. If not, I actually don't think I've pulled up the right chart here. What I want to draw your attention to is just the holders of Bitcoin that are holding more than 1,000 bitcoins in their wallet, or more than 100 bitcoins in their wallet. And generally what you're going to see, unfortunately this is the wrong chart, but generally what you're going to see is that those wallets have actually been selling off a little bit, not massively, but that is evidence that big whales have been selling Bitcoin off. We actually primarily saw those sell-offs at the beginning of this range around $40,000, and I did make a video on it. I just forgot which video it is, but it's somewhere around this date, like towards the middle of January to the beginning of February, somewhere around there is where you would see it. Number three, we've had 2 years of pandemic where the world went into lunatic mode, and yet Bitcoin didn't fall and disappear. So this point is entirely irrelevant. This person is saying that, again, just bringing us back to the main point here, that Bitcoin may not follow the S&P to the same degree. Well, the S&P 500 continued to perform exceptionally well, in my opinion, during the pandemic as well. So, again, this is actually more evidence that Bitcoin is quite correlated with the S&P 500, right? I mean, if we look at this on the daily time frame right here, this is the S&P 500 chart, getting a little bit of lag right here, but bear with me. If we take a look at what's been going on with the S&P 500 throughout the pandemic, obviously we all saw this very large crash at the beginning in March 2020, but after that the S&P 500 performed really well for the rest of the year and throughout 2021 into the pretty much the very beginning of 2022 again, which is where Bitcoin also started to drop off massively. If we look at this, the S&P 500 pretty much peaked at the end of last year, and let's take a look at where Bitcoin peaked, right? We're looking at relatively similar time periods. Bitcoin ended up peaking a whole month and a half before, but broad picture, still the same thing right here. At the end of the year, which was around over here, Bitcoin was still trading at about $46,000, so still higher than where it is right now. So that correlation is actually there, and if anything, it's worse than what Dave has noticed. It has actually been performing slightly worse than the S&P 500. It's been dumping a lot harder, obviously, because it's a smaller asset, but also prematurely. There's a particular chart that I was going to share with you guys that illustrates that actually there have been significant time periods where the S&P 500 has continued to rally up while Bitcoin hasn't. If anything, Bitcoin is a weaker asset compared to the S&P 500 just in terms of when it rises up. Obviously, monetarily, it's going to give you much better returns, I think, than anything else you can possibly invest in other than other cryptocurrencies or, penny stocks or whatever that blow up. But what's very important to take note of is that this point doesn't really serve anything to the original discussion we're having about the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. And I think this is really important because if you're aware of the correlations between the S&P 500 and Bitcoin, you're going to be able to position yourself a little bit better in the market. It's just a fact of how the market is moving. And again, it doesn't mean that they're very tightly correlated, but broadly speaking, especially if the S&P 500 is selling off, I'm going to be expecting Bitcoin to follow suit in a macro term. Day to day fluctuations can happen, week to week fluctuations can happen, but broadly speaking, I am absolutely expecting Bitcoin to continue to follow the S&P 500, perhaps even more so as it matures, because Bitcoin as it matures is becoming more like a conventional asset, and all conventional assets are generally going to be following the indices of major countries like the United States. Number 4, a major war going on with Russia and Ukraine, and yet Bitcoin is still holding firm. Well, this again is also not true. The invasion happened. It really escalated just before this big sell-off right here, or around this big sell-off, and actually, in response to those tensions, Bitcoin sold off massively at the very beginning. Yes, we have managed to rally up and now back down, but I don't call this holding firm. I call this being a dump right as that crisis begins, and followed by a little bit of a reaction rally to the upside, and now losing all of that reaction rally. I don't call this holding firm. That's just not healthy price action in my opinion, especially considering that we tried to break up and we're now down right at the same place. This is holding dangerously. This is not holding firm in my opinion. It's worth 2 trillion and getting more scarce. Bang on, agree with you, but that doesn't really mean anything massive. Really, this is only a demonstration of supply. Supply keeps getting constricted and constricted over time. But if demand isn't there in the first place because people are scared, then it doesn't really matter. If supply keeps getting constricted, it's just not going to be as constricted as demand. And as long as there's a bigger supply than there is demand, and if demand drops like this, but supply only drops like a little bit, it's not really going to matter. So I agree, but it's not relevant. Number 6, it's held its line of support very rigidly on around 39k, and that line is ascending. That's true, but again, it doesn't really have anything to do with the S&P 500, and in fact, this is very much following quite a typical pattern that breaks down. If we look at this chart right here, Bitcoin is very, very clearly in a rising wedge pattern, and we are right at the bottom of it. It's not a rising wedge, it's an ascending channel, but they're both bearish patterns. Really, the whole idea here is that you trend down with quite a large leg, you then consolidate, fight the trend a little bit by moving up slowly, and then eventually you break the trend and you drop down massively. This is like holding an ascending support line isn't the flex that I think a lot of people want it to be. It's not actually that bullish in my opinion. I mean, it's certainly better than continuing to drop, but this is still very much a continuation pattern, and I just want to make sure that we're not losing perspective of that. I can see that it's actually lagging a little bit, so hopefully you guys can still hear me fine. Sorry about that issue there. So I think that's quite important. Let's bring us back to the points here. Many super rich entrepreneurs are singing its praises. I mean, this alone is a red flag to me. I mean, a lot of rich people doesn't automatically mean that something is good or gonna explode in value. It's completely irrelevant. Michael Saylor has established quite a strong reputation for buying high and so on. You know, like he is a great one that everyone loves to suck up to. It's not really relevant, you know, what rich entrepreneurs are saying, in my opinion. I firmly remember, you know, you've got banks and so on, like JP Morgan and key figures around them, saying quite bullish things at quite horrible times, you know, and so on. This, in my opinion, is the least likely reason that Bitcoin will outperform against the S&P 500. You know, just because, I mean, it doesn't really matter what people are saying, even rich entrepreneurs. You know, this is a very, very speculative asset, and I'll tell you what, mate, the bad news is that those people are already in. So guess what? You know, they're not likely to buy anymore, and that means they are more likely to sell if they do anything at all. So, you know, there is this common statistic that was going around the space at some point over these last few months where people were talking about how you know, 70% of people in crypto in the United States today joined crypto. I can see this is lagging a lot. I'm really sorry about that. They joined crypto in 2021 alone, you know, which is a huge statistic that everyone got excited about. But actually, that tells you a little bit about how many people can now sell Bitcoin. If they've already bought, the bullish headline is gone. There is no bullish headline anymore. You know what I mean? Like now there is active Bitcoins in circulation, in the hands of common folk, normal people who are much more subject to panic, who have much worse financial literacy than these rich entrepreneurs that you are mentioning. They're more likely to panic sell, mate. And I think it's absolutely no coincidence that we've seen such huge panic selling over the course of, you know, basically the end of last year and this year, and summer of last year as well. I think this is the reason that we saw that kind of price action, was because you know, so many retail traders entered the market, and so naturally they're going to drive the price ridiculously high very, very quickly, but they will sell it just as quickly, if not even faster, because they panic. So again, I just wanted to you know, level us out a little bit. These are points that this person made in response to my, you know, mention about the S&P 500 and how I think that, you know, if the S&P 500 is going to drop, and there are some signs that it could be looking to drop quite a bit, well then, you know, that could spell, you know, quite some disaster for Bitcoin. You know, and this person, you know, again, he raised some good points. I think the bottom line, and the reason that I think this is so important to look at, is that this person mentions at the very end that he is biased because he did buy some today, you know, and this is what I really want to draw your attention to. You know, just because you bought something, it's not going to go up. Again, I expect it'll go up eventually. It's Bitcoin at the end of the day. I think it's the best asset you can possibly buy. But you know, about the short term, or about how it might perform compared to the S&P 500, I don't really think those factors matter too much. And I just wanted to kind of ground us and give ourselves a reality check on this, because again, you know, some of these points which are quite dangerous to be talking about, like there's no evidence of big whales selling off Bitcoin. There is. There is evidence of it. I've shown it to you on this YouTube channel. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. You know, big whales are not necessarily smart whales. They're, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. It can, and a lot of the times it has, but not 100% of the time. So seeing that big whales are selling Bitcoin off, to me, is not a nice sign, but it's not something I worry about. I mean, they make wrong decisions too. You know, a lot of whales, they sold a lot of Bitcoin at $20,000 when Bitcoin hit 20K back here at the end of, what is that? At the end of 2020, when Bitcoin hit 20K over here, a lot of whales sold their Bitcoin right here, you know, and so this is clear evidence that whales don't always make the right decisions either. But you know, to go around mentioning stuff like this that's just straight up not true is dangerous. And again, that's what a lot of Bitcoin people do. I'm not expecting them to stop. This is a very emotional market. This is a market with a lot of misinformation. You know, people just literally pull stuff out of their fucking arse and start broadcasting it on social media. You already know that other YouTubers are doing the same thing. Like I said, it's way more profitable as a YouTuber to be permanently bullish and telling your fans you're always going to make money. Guess what? That's going to make them love you. You know, I mean, it very much is like a cult thing with a lot of the people in this space. No shade at them. If that's what they want to do, that's up to them. You're all adults at the end of the day. You do whatever the fuck you like. But bottom line, you know, what that means with the S&P 500 and reality are two different things, you know, and that's why I wanted to bring this up, because again, I'm not expecting the rest of the space to stop being unreasonable, but I would love if more of this audience was a little bit more switched on, just knowing the facts and staying grounded right here. If the S&P 500 drops, again, the thing that I rest my case on is that you know, Bitcoin is quite a large asset now. It's matured quite a bit. It needs big money to move it, and we're not going to get big money in this market if investors are scared, because this is a risky market. And so for a risky market to attract investors, investors need to feel confident in themselves first. You know, again, I've given you guys this analogy where if you had $100,000 and you lost 50% of it within a month, or 30% of it, you know, within 6 months or whatever, you're going to be less inclined to take risky bets. You're going to be a little bit more defensive. That's just how people are. And you know, when your big safe index, the S&P 500, the one that you've been able to rely on for decades, starts to show some signs of weakness, people understandably are not going to want to entertain taking riskier bets on. And again, that's why if the S&P 500 looks like it's bearish, and I'm not going to break this down in this video, so again, just go back and watch my most recent one if you missed it. If it does look bearish, like it's going to continue to drop much lower, that's quite a big macro move, and I really don't see Bitcoin being immune from that. You know, it hasn't been. It consistently hasn't been immune from these kind of pullbacks. Let's take a look at this one right here, beginning of September to end of September. Did Bitcoin have a pullback at roughly the same time? Let's see this. I haven't actually tested this. Bam, look at that. Look at that. Beginning of September until roughly the end of September. This is where Bitcoin gets a really big pullback. Guys, the correlation is very clear. Bitcoin consistently performs similarly to the S&P 500 in terms of market direction. Of course, it's not happening on the same days. The big sell-off starts on the 7th of September for Bitcoin, but for the S&P 500 index, it peaks around the 2nd, you know, so it's off. It's off by sometimes a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of days or whatever, but the direction nonetheless is pretty clear. It's pretty hard to negate. It's pretty hard to ignore. And again, you know, that to me is a critical part of evaluating this. You know, I do think that Bitcoin is going to continue to outperform every index like this in the world, but you know, I absolutely do think that it's going to get really pummeled and punched and kicked while it's on the ground if you know, indices like this are suffering, because again, you need the more mainstream investors to be comfortable, and they ain't going to be comfortable if their index is dropping. That's just the bottom line. That's just how it is, and you don't need more proof about this than the crypto market itself, because when Bitcoin is crashing, altcoins are crashing much harder. You know, it's actually pretty obvious to say out loud, but it needs to be said. I'm actually curious if we measure this from high to low. It's actually not the most fair comparison, because most altcoins didn't really even rally very much, but let's take a look at one that did. Bitcoin dropped by 16% from its high to its current price right now. Let's see an equivalent drop in the altcoin market. This is LUNA, dropping by 32%, right? I mean, this is a great example of when the market looks like it's scary, people will sell their altcoins faster. They won't want to speculate. Cardano's high to its current price, down by 24%. Across the board, these coins have performed worse than Bitcoin. Ethereum right here against Bitcoin. Look at this, similar actually. It's actually slightly outperformed Bitcoin. It's dropped by a little bit less, which we can see with the Ethereum Bitcoin chart. It's actually helped really well. Obviously, you guys know the deal there. I was trading Ethereum and managed to close a beautiful profit of up to 201%, which is absolutely stunning. That all went on inside of VIP, and it's more than half price off right now, but that deal ends today. There's literally just a few hours left. I announced it in my last video. Here is your second and final reminder. Only a few hours left to get in on that discount, so if you do want to access it, then follow these steps on screen to jump inside of 𝗓𝗡𝗡𝗧 VIP and see how I traded, see how I pulled off that Ethereum trade, and continue to get more insights in real time on the next trades I'm going to make, because I tell you about every single trade I'm considering. And when I commit to those trades, I also tell you why I've committed to them and where, where my entry levels are going to be, where my stop losses are going to be, my targets, and so on. I already decide these things before I enter my trade. Before I enter my trades, most of the time at least, and I tell you about it in real time as it develops. I tell you why I'm moving my stop loss and where I'd be moving it to, and same with my targets and so on. So there's a lot going on inside of there, and it's all available with the first link in the description for you. That's going to take you to my free Telegram channel, where you can click on my name at the bottom of any post and then send message to ask me how to join. But there you go. Very, very interesting video, very different to what I usually do. Let me know what you think in the comment sections below. Please let me know, do you want to see more videos like this? I'm super happy to have conversations like this, especially with people as amazing as Dave, who are just leaving super civil, well thought out comments. I love having these discussions. I like to disagree. It's kind of who I am, but I've tried to do it with nuance. I'm not clearly not trying to attack Dave. He's a very nice guy, and very, very self-aware, mentioning that perhaps he is biased because he did buy some today. For the record, I think this is a phenomenal area to be buying Bitcoin, to at least dollar cost average and buy a little bit. I think this is a great level. Like, if I had money to buy Bitcoin right now, I sure as shit would be buying Bitcoin. So I think it's pretty good. But again, the discussion here is about if the S&P 500 drops, Bitcoin would probably follow. And this person listed these reasons for why it wouldn't. And hopefully you've seen why. There's probably more to the story than what's written here. And I wanted to bring that to your attention, because I know many of you would be holding similar thoughts in your head as well. And hopefully this video has helped a little bit. I'm not trying to be bearish here. I'm just trying to be realistic. If that happens to be bearish, then oh well. But if it happens to be bullish, then oh well. Because guess what? I'm a trader. I trade it when it moves up. I trade it when it moves down. Whether it moves up or down, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, everyone prefers it when it moves up. It's always more fun. But as a trader, it's no more or less important. So there you go. Those are my thoughts. My thoughts. If you enjoyed this style of video, do me a favor and smash up the likes. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you tick the bell as well to make sure that you don't miss out on this content. Again, VIP is right here. If you want to see how this level-headed thinking translates into trading, you can do so by, again, following that first link in the description. Here was a video with bad lighting and lots of lag. Hope you've been able to enjoy it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good one. Bye-bye.